Hi, this is Jacob Shneiderman. This is my final project for Global History of Narcotics. So I'm going to be doing my final project on drugs and music festivals and their history and what drugs are being done today at music festivals and just what the climate of that looks like today. So I aim to answer two questions in this presentation. One, how has the relationship between drugs and music festivals changed over time? And two, what does the current climate of drugs and music festivals look like today? So, first part is about the first music festivals. Waldemar Cudny, a professor at the University of Lodz who specializes in urban tourism, geography, and event studies, discusses in his article the phenomenon of festivals, their origins, evolutions, and classifications, how festivals are a place where humans bond with nature and each other, and how cultures all around the world have their own versions of social, cultural, and religious festivals. He states that characteristic features of festivals are celebration, enjoyment, ceremony, and departure from the ordinary. They are in a way transgressions of the everyday routine. Cudny talks about how the first festivals were nature-related celebrations, aside from social occasions like weddings or funerals. In the Middle Ages and Renaissance period, urban festivals and carnivals arose, which showcased merchants' goods, theatrical performances, and competitions. Then during the 1700s in France under Louis XIV, events centered around musical performances became popular. From 1850 to 1950, events like expos and world fairs became popular with the birth of major technological advancements, drawing in large crowds with people from all over the world. In 1969, the Woodstock Music Festival spurred a rise in music-based festivals all across the world. I'm going to talk about Woodstock. During the Vietnam War, a lot of people, especially younger people, started to reject the previous generation's philosophies. Young people did not trust the politicians and corporations that were fueling the Vietnam War and behind various political scandals at the time, as well as spreading blatant lies and propaganda about drugs like cannabis, mushrooms, and LSD. Young people in America had no reason to support the United States government or believe anything government officials said. In 1969, a group of four guys, Artie Kornfeld, Michael Lang, John P. Roberts, and Joel Rosenman, came up with the idea to hold the world's largest music festival, the Woodstock Rock Festival. The festival featured some of the leading rock and countercultural bands of the time, including Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Grateful Dead, Joe Cocker, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, drawing in a massive crowd of over 500,000 people, according to Woodstock.com. The intention of Woodstock was to pave the way for the new countercultural movement in America, to provide a tolerant setting for counterculture youth to experiment with drugs, to express their feelings regarding the political situation in the U.S. with others their age, and to create a peaceful utopia for young people, free of authority. The festival goers wanted an experience where they could depart from reality, experiment, and immerse themselves in a hedonistic experience. Ryan Kent writes in his article, Drugs at Woodstock, that tripping on acid, smoking opium, snorting cocaine, using psychedelic mushrooms, and many other forms of getting high were frequently seen at Woodstock. While Woodstock was one of the most important moments in the history of popular music and American counterculture, the prominent drug culture that was a part of the movement also led to drug overdoses at the festival. In an article recounting the events of Woodstock, published in Time magazine, author Curry Engel writes about how Dr. William Abruzzi, dubbed the Rock Doc, was initially hired to oversee medical issues, but quickly recognized that he would need some backup. The Hog Farm, a commune in Santa Fe, New Mexico, brought its members to help therapeutically treat concertgoers who experienced bad trips. According to Abruzzi's original medical record of the event, provided to Time by the Museum at Bethel Woods, a museum dedicated to the history of Woodstock, 742 overdoses were reported throughout the 3 days, 28 of which required medication. Additionally, Sheriff Lou Radner of Sullivan County explained in Behind the Music, Woodstock, that the U.S. Army had to be flown in to drop more than 10,000 sandwiches, in addition to canned goods, water, fruit, medical supplies, and blankets to the ill-supplied crowd. While Woodstock is praised as being one of the most important American cultural events, it should also be remembered that the festival was plagued by drug overdoses and insufficient supplies. So this brings us to the second part of the presentation, which is drugs and music festivals today. After Woodstock, the drug-centered countercultural movement only continued to grow and adapt to modern culture in America and around the world, and music festivals became more and more popular. In Europe, the implementation of the European Union in 1985 increased the number of music festivals. The biggest rise of music festivals around the world happened in the 1990s and 2000s, however. Cudney links the boom of music festivals to the growing popularity and access of tourism that came alongside increasing modernization. Music festivals continue to welcome and harbor drug experimentation. In The Use of Tobacco and Cannabis at an International Music Festival, a research report on a survey conducted by Aarhus University in Copenhagen, Denmark, 1,772 attendees were interviewed regarding their drug use at the Roskilde Festival in Denmark. It is stated in the introduction that due to the nature of relaxed social norms at music festivals, people are more open to trying new things. This includes drug use, sexual behaviors, and violent behaviors. The main data the researchers were collecting, though, were how many attendees were using drugs at the festival, and more specifically, how many attendees were using drugs for the first time at the festival. The data shows that 9% of tobacco and cannabis users were using tobacco or cannabis for the first time while at the festival. However, most people who were using other drugs like MDMA, LSD, or amphetamines were continuing their pre-existing drug use at the festival and were not new users. It was found that festivals like the Roskilde Festival are rare for users to try experimenting with harder drugs. One factor in the study worth mentioning, though, is that the Roskilde Festival caters generally to a rock and pop crowd. Use of drugs like MDMA, LSD, and amphetamines are more highly associated with EDM and electronic festivals today. The big thing medical professionals are worried about now are EDM and electronic festivals, as well as raves, which are centered around club drug use. In an article called Club Drugs and Their Treatment, published in Psychiatric Times, David McDowell discusses the history of the three most common club drugs, MDMA, ketamine, and GHB, their effects, and the treatment options that are available for the abuse of these drugs. He states in the conclusion of his article, "The evidence that MDMA causes neurotoxicity is compelling, and GHB has been the cause of substantial numbers of overdose. The younger individuals are when they first use drugs, the more likely they will go on to use more drugs. This is cause for a call for effective education and prevention measures. The risk of overdose with these drugs creates an increasingly more dangerous and scary environment for concertgoers at live music events. Another factor that makes club drugs especially dangerous is that they are commonly cut with more dangerous drugs like fentanyl. According to drugabuse.gov, the official website of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, illegal fentanyl is being mixed with other drugs such as cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and MDMA. This is especially dangerous because people are often unaware that fentanyl has been added. Also, the high potency of fentanyl greatly increases risk of overdose, especially if a person who uses drugs is unaware that a powder or pill contains it. They can underestimate the dose of opioids they are taking, resulting in overdose. The dangers of these club drugs have brought about pill testing services like DANCESAFE at live music events. On the DANCESAFE website, it is stated that the MDMA market in particular is a highly adulterated illicit drug market, and DANCESAFE provides drug checking services for MDMA users in a number of ways, including testing kits, laboratory pill testing, and online pill testing. DANCESAFE's biggest obstacle in implementing their services at live music events, however, has been the Reducing Americans' Vulnerability to Ecstasy Act, or the RAVE Act, introduced by Senator Joseph Biden in 2002. It is stated on amendtheraveact.org that the RAVE Act expanded earlier crack house laws to include commercial venues, allowing business owners to be prosecuted if they maintain a drug-involved premises. When originally passed, the act gave law enforcement officials greater power to shut down underground dance parties when promoters were knowingly and intentionally encouraging the use of illicit drugs. However, its current language has created a more dangerous situation today by discouraging legitimate EDM concert and festival organizers from enacting common sense safety measures to protect their patrons. Providing free water and air-conditioned rooms and allowing drug education and other harm reduction services inside their events would save lives. Yet many event organizers are afraid that these actions could be seen as encouraging drug use and therefore subject them to criminal prosecution under the RAVE Act. In a study conducted at a large mixed-genre music event in New South Wales in 2017, participants were asked if they approve of pill testing at live music events. The second section of the survey was to only be answered by participants who said they have taken illicit drugs in the past. The participants were asked, if a harmful substance was detected in your drugs using the pill testing service, how likely would you be to still consume them? With answers ranging between not at all, a little, somewhat, and a lot. While some frequent users of illicit drugs stated that they would still take the drugs, most who answered said that they would not. This study shows that while some problems in the world of drugs and music festivals are simply unavoidable, most people are not resistant to finding a solution, and that concertgoers approve of pill testing. Since Woodstock, many festivals including Coachella, Lollapalooza, and Bonnaroo, just to name a few, have been started and turned into annual traditions. While music festivals were originally intended to be a cheap way for young people to have fun and socialize with other like-minded young people, they have turned into luxury tourism experiences. While festivals are still centered around departing from the ordinary and transgressing from the everyday routine as they always have, they are also centered around the characteristics of today's culture: excessive consumption, high highs, and complete immersion. Furthermore, the drug culture today has evolved into one that is centered around excessiveness and more potent and dangerous drugs. Pill testing needs to become normalized at raves and live music events, but pieces of legislation like the RAVE Act are only making these environments more dangerous and not actually solving the problem. It is inevitable that people will do drugs at music festivals, so it is important that there are safe conditions, for example, having enough medical staff on site, providing proper pill testing, and not overselling venues at these events, and that education about drug consumption at music festivals and raves is easily accessible. Whether you are going to Coachella, Burning Man, or an illegal rave, bring plenty of water, appoint a designated driver, stick with your friends, and if you're planning on taking drugs, get them tested at the event or beforehand. Thank you for watching.